how are
Hey,
you?
I'm pretty good. I'm ready for the start of cancer season. So I'm glad we are
Yes.
here to talk about it today.
Yay! Yay! I tell you, it has been it's been a day. It's just just
The deep breathing is also a perfect start, to get to prep for cancer season. There's so much I love about Gemini season, but it's very busy. It's kind of one thing after another, and we're in our minds a lot because all of those air signs are, kind of rule the intellect, the logic, all of our prefrontal cortex activities. So with Cancer, we do get to kind of take a step back and tap into our intuition, let go of the busyness and intellect a
right.
little bit.
Right, right. And I'm at a point where I'm ready to delve a little deeper into things, like that
Yes.
I'm kind of and I've got so many things I'm excited to talk to you about, but because I have a Cancer moon, I want to see how that affects my Cancer moon too. And so many things, so many things. I'm so excited. I thought what I would do though first is to show everybody the High Priestess card
Mhm.
that represents Cancer. It's also my card. I love this card. So very, very beautiful. There is the tarot card that represents Cancer, so everybody can kind of see it. We can bring in that energy, and we've also got a full moon coming up, which I wanted to talk to you about because I got very confused about this, y'all. I was listening to another tarot reader on YouTube. Her name is Mary Jo, and she is Soulful Revolution. She does a great job. And she was talking about, and I knew I was wrong. I just didn't understand it. She was talking about a new moon or a full moon in Capricorn. And I was like, wait, I'm so confused. We're going into Cancer season. How are we having a full moon in Capricorn? Because Capricorn isn't like, so I called Karina and I'm like, what is this? So if
Yeah, and
you want
this is
to
actually a really
start,
common, yeah, this is a really common initial confusion for people. Um, and it's important to kind of think about sort of physically what's happening when we get a new moon and a full moon. And when
Mhm.
we get a new moon, we basically, the moon is always there, the moon always exists. But when the
Right.
moon moves so that it's essentially right with like right near the sun is
Hmm.
so bright that we cannot see the moon anymore. And so that's when we get a new moon. So when a
Right.
new moon occurs, the sun and the moon are in the same sign. They both are in front of, this month it will be the constellation of Cancer.
Right.
And then with a full moon, the full moon is when the moon is on the opposite side of the earth. And so the sun is shining its full brightness onto the face of the moon, and we see the whole moon. So
Uh-huh.
full moons always take place in the opposite sign to where the sun is. So since the sun is going to be in Cancer for the full moon at the end of this week, then the moon will be in Capricorn, the opposite sign to Cancer.
I was so excited you explained that to me because I knew she wasn't wrong. Like I just knew I didn't understand it. And I'm like, and y'all I was like, I'm confused.
Oh,
Which is
but I
really
think
good to have a friend like that you can call and be like, explain this to me.
And I think what I love though, Christy, about you asking this question is it points out something really important about every single full moon, where every new moon is very cohesive because the
Uh-huh.
sun and the moon are in the same sign, working in the same ways towards the same goals. Whereas a full moon, the moon is in the polar opposite sign. So with
Mhm.
full moons, there is always kind of it doesn't always have to be a tension, but it's always
Mhm.
kind of a balance. Sometimes that can look like a little bit of push and
Right,
pull.
right,
Sometimes
right.
that can also look like complementary energies because they're both
Mhm.
bringing opposite energies, but it will
Mhm.
never look cohesive the way a
Right.
new moon will. Always, always. And Capricorn, as you said, Christy, it's such a different energy fundamentally
Yeah.
than Cancer. Um, and
Right.
so, yeah, that's what we get with this full moon and with every full moon is the completely opposite energy that the moon is trying to work through.
That is really helpful to me. I hope that is helpful to you guys out there. So with this full moon that's coming before we get into the Cancer stuff, what is this a good time to charge our crystals? What can we look for? It's also on the solstice. Is that not correct?
It is, yeah. And so the solstice, because without going too much into tropical versus sidereal
Mm-hmm.
zodiac, we could even talk about that in a future episode if we wanted to. But
Yeah.
in Western astrology, we use the tropical zodiac where we define the summer solstice as being at the end of Gemini, the beginning of Cancer. And everybody
Mm-hmm.
knows this as the longest day of the year in the Northern
Right.
Hemisphere. So it's when we get our maximum amount of sunlight.
Mhm.
So it's a very beautiful time and it kind of represents this fullness of summer. And because the full moon is happening just a day after that solstice, we kind of
Mhm.
get that full moon energy hitting right on the solstice. So it's sort of two big astrological events that are happening right at the same time this year. It doesn't always
Okay.
happen this close together. Sometimes the full moon
Mhm.
might be midway through Cancer season or at the end of Cancer season. But this year, yeah,
Mhm.
it's happening right at the beginning of Cancer season, right on that solstice. Um,
Right.
as far as would I charge my crystals during this full moon, I actually might. There are multiple things I
Okay.
really like about this full moon. Um,
Mhm.
First of um, all of the cardinal signs, and I won't get too deeply into what cardinal is. Again, that
Mhm.
could be another
Mhm.
episode if we wanted to.
Yeah.
But Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn are all the cardinal signs, and they represent initiation and new beginnings. And those
Mhm.
very early degrees, those first couple of
Mhm.
degrees of each one of those signs are the most initiatory of the initiatory signs. So
Uh-huh.
there's so much potential in those first couple of degrees of each of these signs. And that is where the full moon will be happening at like 1 degree of Cancer Capricorn. So I love
Oh,
that. I also love that Venus, which we love Venus,
yes.
relational, beautiful, artistic,
Yeah.
graceful, flowy, fluid. Venus is also only a few degrees away from the sun during this full
Oh,
moon.
okay.
So Venus is
Okay.
bringing some of that gorgeous, artistic energy in. The one thing to keep in mind is that, again, as you pointed out, Christy, this isn't a Cancer moon. This is a Capricorn moon. We'll get the Cancer new moon later in the month, um,
Uh-huh.
later in the Cancer season. But there
Uh-huh.
will be an inherent Capricorn quality to this
Mhm.
moon.
Mhm.
So, if we charge our crystals under this full moon, um, there will be a lot of energy around creating boundaries, building things up, creating structure, setting goals, and then doing the work to
Mhm.
accomplish them.
Mhm.
It will be more externally focused energy
Mhm.
than a
Mhm.
Cancer full moon,
Mhm.
which happens
Right.
during Capricorn season in 6 months. But
Right.
all in all, I like how this is shaping up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how
Good.
this is shaping up.
Good. Well, then I will definitely stick some of those crystals out. And Ben, he says, wait, things need to be charged. Yes, Ben, things need to be charged. And we're not laughing at you. It's such a sweet question. So
Mhm,
yes, charging your decks, charging your crystals is,
mhm,
any tools of divination is a really Important thing to do. And when you do it under the moon, you get the energy of that moon and that kind of thing. So sometimes that can be very chaotic and you don't want that because, like, if you're like me, my life is crazy enough. I don't need any extra brought in. But if you're doing something around boundaries and maybe you've got a very protective crystal that you like. Then
Mm.
you can definitely do that if that's something. So Ben, I know that you are very empathic, so that would be a great time to charge some of your black crystals to help you with those boundaries
Mm.
and that protection and things like that. Or anybody that's looking to get into those types of things, or even, I mean, it doesn't just have to be crystals and decks. You could charge your journal. You could charge, if you're working, if
Mm.
you're doing some of that deep shadow work and you're working on how to um, build those boundaries, like you said, and bring in structure. And that's something that you're wanting to do. You can absolutely put your journal out there and bring that energy into your journal and how you write. And so I love working in the moon energy. There's so much to it. So I'm still like learning, all of the things that you can do, because there's a lot of like rituals around it you can do. There's a lot of like,
Mhm.
charging your crystals, but how can you use that to benefit you? So I think that's amazing. So with that, let's talk Cancer season. Sorry, guys, I'm just a little discombobulated. If I get confused, sort me out.
This is where we all tend to get at the end of Gemini season. There's so much
Uh-huh.
talking, communication, activity of
Yes.
the brain. And again, this is great. Like it's
Mhm.
great to kind of be out there, be social, learning new ideas, learning new perspectives,
Right.
communicating a whole bunch. That's amazing. But every zodiac sign um, in sequence kind of brings a corrective, helpful action to the one that came before it. So with
Mhm.
Gemini, we do get that, more frenetic, busy, outward facing activity.
Mhm.
And with Cancer, we start to look internally. We've had all of these experiences, we've had all these conversations, we've experienced all these new perspectives. Now we kind of start to want to withdraw into
Mhm.
ourself, into our,
Right.
safe space. Many times into our homes, and sort of process what
Mhm.
we've learned, what
Yeah.
we've talked about, what we've experienced, and start to kind of consolidate things. Because with Gemini, it's like, here's the thing, 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 here's the thing. And then
Yeah.
Cancer is like, okay, what do all of these have in common? How can I bucket these and group these? And then in some
Mhm.
cases, that internal reflection might look like, that was a fun idea. I tried it out. I actually
Uh-huh.
don't want it.
Right.
So
Right.
Cancer is really about that, bringing everything in and integrating it into your body, into your soul that you
Mhm.
want to keep, and then throwing out the rest.
Right. Right.
Um, and
Um,
Rebecca has a great question too. Does the moonlight
yeah.
need to be shining on the item to get the benefit? Rebecca, there are different schools of thought on this. I live in Seattle, where it is often very cloudy, and I have frequently been disappointed to not get actual moonlight. I the vibe I have gotten from charging crystals is that you can do it. The moon is still there and is still
Mhm.
present, even if it's cloudy and the moonlight itself is not touching the crystal. But I do find that there is an extra oomph of power when the actual light of the moon itself comes in contact with whatever you're charging.
Yes.
Christy, I don't
And
know if you have thoughts.
yeah, I agree with you. I like it when it can just be full on there. And I will say this, if you're charging your crystals, your deck, whatever, by the moonlight, make sure it hits. Oh, am I
Mhm.
gone? Eh,
We heard everything. Yes,
Okay,
yes,
yes, yes.
yes, to
So,
remove them
so
before
make
the
sure,
sunlight hits.
yes, yes, yes. And oh, another thing that we could talk about, well, I don't want to get to, but I mean, it kind of goes with Cancer, moon water.
Mhm.
So I use that a lot. I love that. You can take some, I always use like the purest best grade bottled water I can find. And I keep it in a glass jar and I put it under the moonlight and I charge it. You can use that then for all different kinds of things. You can drink it. You can put it in your bath for a ritual bath. If you do any kind of spell workings or anything like that, you can use it in that. Sometimes, depending on what the water, what I've charged it with, I will actually put it on my third eye when I'm doing tarot
Mm,
readings or something like that to bring that in. In this instance, where it's that Capricorn energy with setting boundaries, you could make yourself a nice little tea before you maybe have to have that difficult
mm.
conversation. I really love moon water. I love working with water as well, which is really interesting because
Cancer moon.
even, yes,
You picked the
yes.
Cancer moon.
Well, and Aquarius being the water bearer, I feel like it's just kind
Yes,
of like
yes.
water is my thing. So yes, you can definitely do that too. And again, it's not, you don't have to have anything special. Just get a really nice jar with a really good lid, label it, make the label beautiful and creative, or just put a label on there. I find that when I put intent into things, intention, it is, I just feel like it is, I don't know, it just has something a little extra with it, a little extra
Yeah.
special. So yes, yes. All right. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what we can look forward to, what's coming our way, and then you guys will, if the question fits, we'll answer it as we go. Otherwise, I might just pin it and get it at the end. So if you ask a question and we don't get it answered straight away, we didn't forget you. I might have just pinned it to keep the flow going. So,
Love it.
so
Okay.
yeah.
So as we kind of started talking about, Gemini accumulates all of these ideas and experiences, but
Mhm.
really doesn't integrate them. It's almost like it fills a bookshelf and says, look at all these things I've learned
Right.
and found out about. But Cancer is where we kind of go internally and
Mhm.
very little of what we experience or learn about in Gemini becomes part of us. It's almost like, it's set aside. It's something we are
Uh,
aware of, but not something we have integrated. So Cancer
oh.
season is when we would do that integration. So for example, maybe you heard about a really cool idea or some new ritual, or you talked to someone, they had a different perspective, you thought that
Mhm.
was kind of interesting, but you put a pin in it for later. This is really going to be the time to budget time by yourself, for yourself, to just sit and feel and
Mhm.
process. Gemini, and this would drive Gemini crazy because Gemini wants to do, move, move, move.
Right.
But
Right.
Cancer is not aware of time in the same way. For Cancer, time is fluid. Um,
Mhm.
Cancer is almost a, a timeless, ageless sign. Even thinking about that High Priestess card that you showed earlier, Christy, there's this
Mhm.
sense of there's no rush. You don't need to
Mhm.
hurry. Things will
Mhm.
happen at the right time. And
Mhm.
I almost do think of going from Gemini season to Cancer season as Gemini, we're looking at the calendar constantly. And when we move
Mhm.
to Cancer, there's a little bit of a what calendar? What is time? We kind of start to step back from that. And
Right.
I
Right.
frequently
Right.
see for people with strong Gemini placements, Gemini, Sun, Moon, Rising, Mercury, and Gemini, they struggle with Cancer season because they want to run their life off of a schedule and a calendar. And
Right,
Cancer
right,
season
right.
just isn't very supportive of that. It tends to be a bit more, yeah, fluid and cyclical. Cancer is the one zodiac sign that's ruled by the moon. And we see the moon change phases every night, going from new to full
Mm-hmm,
and then back to
mm-hmm,
new through the course of a month. And,
mm-hmm,
it's almost like, today Cancer might feel a certain way.
uh-huh.
Tomorrow they might feel a different way. And there
Yeah.
isn't really a linear, consecutive
Mm-hmm.
progress in the way
Right.
Gemini would like to see. It's much
Uh-huh.
more, okay, I'm feeling this today. I'm feeling this
Uh-huh.
tomorrow. You know, it's much more watery and
Uh-huh.
fluid, and
Uh-huh.
it's generally not a great time during Cancer season to try to track progress really tightly, by these objective metrics. It's almost
Right.
like you got to kind of go in the Cancer circles and take the detours, and you will wind up in a good place, but it will not look like a straight line. You really have to go with your gut, to go with your feeling.
Right.
And so that's a big change that we typically see when we shift from Gemini to Cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And, talking about the solstice,
Mm-hmm.
since that is speedily coming up and will mark the beginning of our Cancer season, we think of Leo as being kind of the height of summer, very hot, very bright, ruled by the
Uh-huh.
sun. But
Right.
the Cancer season takes place during a very hot, warm time of the
Mm-hmm.
year in the Northern Hemisphere as well. But it tends to be a different kind of warmth. It's the warmth of the moon rather than the warmth of the sun. And so, the sun is going to make you physically warm. You can see
Right.
behind me, lots of sun. You walk
Right.
out there, you will be physically warm. But the warmth
Right.
of the moon tends to be that nurturing, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of warm, internal, fuzzy feeling of being loved, being cared for. And so that is such a hallmark of this season. Um, how can we take care of others, give them that inner warm, fuzzy feeling? How can we take care of ourselves? Who is there to help take care of us? This is a season for nurturing and being nurtured. And again, all of this is very antithetical to Gemini season. In Gemini, we were too busy to think about how we feel. Now we're ready to feel all the feels. So that is all kind of coming.
Right.
And yeah, thinking about that warmth of the moon as that
Yeah.
emotional, soul, internal warmth.
And
Um, and then, yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say real quick, I have a bit of lag, guys. I'm sorry. Can't crabs, I mentioned this in the last one. They don't move in a straight line. They go sideways. So like a crab never just comes right at you. So it makes sense that you would go in this fluid, not straight. I'm over here, now I'm over here, and I'm back here, but it's never going to be straight at you. Because
Yes.
crabs just don't. I mean, that's how you outrun a crab, just run in a straight line. But we're always coming at you sideways, and it's not always a bad thing. It's just, and I feel like that's me. It's like, wait, where is she? Where is she? Oh, there she is. Where'd she come from? Like, well, who cares? She's here. Hallelujah. Kind of thing. So. And I find what helps me too, as you guys are learning this, and as I'm learning more, because I'm learning so much, think of the people that you know in your life that have these signs, like a sun sign or a moon sign. What are they like? And that helps
Mhm.
me a lot to understand this season, because I'm like, oh, okay, that's exactly who, like Aquarius season, that's exactly Christy, or Taurus season. Oh, that's so Karina, but start thinking of that too, and maybe just writing down your list, like, oh, so and so mentioned they're this, or kind of do that like 1960s. What's your sign? But that's something that might help too. I thought I'd just put what it's worth. So if you find your, oh God, my internet, if you
You just
find
slipped
you're
a little
just
bit. You're
doing this,
back. It's
oh,
okay.
good. Okay, if you find you're doing this, it really is truly because you've embraced and enveloped that energy. Absolutely.
I love that so much, Christy, and kind of talking about, yeah, looking at people that
Uh-huh.
have birthdays during Cancer season. You know that
Yeah.
they are going to be Sun in Cancer, and even thinking about the crab moving sideways, which I
Mhm.
love that. I love that as a metaphor. I think that's so perfect for Cancer. There
Yeah.
is that, yeah, it's not gonna go in a straight line. The other
Right.
thing about the crab moving sideways is crabs are very soft and
Hmm.
vulnerable, to
Hmm.
being eaten by a bunch of
Right.
different creatures in their environment. And so they need a
Right.
shell to
Right.
protect, kind of their soft body, their soft underbelly. And there's almost this quality with cancers where the world is a lot for them. They tend to
Mhm.
be very empathetic, very intuitive, very easy to kind of pick up on the energy of those around them. And what
Mhm.
I typically see with Cancer Sun people,
Mhm.
I see one of two types.
Mhm.
One is the person who comes across as extremely nurturing, loving, caretaking, kind of that archetypal
Mhm.
motherly energy.
Mhm.
Um, or I see the person who started out that way, got burned really early on with that level of
Yeah.
emotional vulnerability, and they've
Mhm.
built up the shell, and you see the
Yeah.
shell, and so sometimes Cancer Suns will actually come across as very sarcastic,
Mhm.
self-deprecating, and that is part of their shell, and that is an
Mhm.
important defense mechanism against all of the energy in the world kind of coming at them. So
Right.
I find I see those two almost polar opposite Cancer types, depending on whether they've been sort of burned by being too emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a beautiful point. My comments are kind of stuck. So, Karina, if you see anything that you want to address, just shout it out.
All right.
But that is beautiful. Yeah. So what else do you got for us?
Yes. So one thing that's interesting with all of the water signs, which is
Mhm.
Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, is they all are represented by an animal, but it's not a mammal. It's
Mhm.
an arthropod, which includes reptiles, maybe, yeah, definitely insects, spiders, and it includes crabs, fish, scorpions, all of these kind of non-mammal animals that the water signs represent. And so, if we think about what we know from science about life kind of emerging from water,
Mhm.
and the very first life forms maybe being some bacteria or single-celled organisms or something, the idea was they came from the water and
Right.
eventually made their way onto land. And so water has this beginning of life characteristic. And even thinking about the womb as this kind of
Mhm.
enveloped watery space where a baby grows and develops, and kind of becomes finds their life. Um,
Right.
and so water is viewed as this really integral life element. And 70% of the earth is water, 70% of our bodies is water. Water is
Mm.
so fundamental to us living and existing in this world. And
Mhm.
so there's something inherently more primitive and old and ancient about all of the water signs. So if we think about Gemini as being our prefrontal cortex, this part of
Uh-huh.
our brain that does reason and logic and math equations, and things like that, the water signs are much more the back of our brain stem, that
Mhm.
really old reptilian, part of our brain that operates on instinct and intuition not on
Mhm.
logic. So I think that's really an interesting dynamic too, as we move from sort of the prefrontal cortex, reason, logic, juggling a bunch of different things, to kind of more that back of our brain. What
Mhm.
feels right? What feels
Yes.
resonant? How do we trust our gut rather than, try to justify something with logic? Gemini is the season for justifying a decision with logic, but Cancer, it's enough to just say it feels right or it doesn't feel right. And I think especially in our modern world, um, it can be hard to do that. We
Mhm.
always feel the need to justify something with
Yeah.
modern reasoning and just
Right.
saying, well, I'm not really feeling it.
Mhm.
That it
Mhm.
feels like we need to do something else or say something more. But yeah, Cancer
Yes.
season Cancer season is all about trusting that intuition, and if you're not
Mhm.
feeling it, it's probably not right for you. So really even, visualizing we're kind of entering a season ruled by the water element that is a more ancient part of
Mhm.
ourselves. Um, yeah, so I think that's really interesting and important to kind of think about too. Um,
So would
and
that be
then,
why would that be why
yeah,
I really enjoy working with those older energies? Why I feel much more connected to like those more ancient traditions as opposed to the newest, latest thing? Would that be that
probably
Cancer moon
yes.
part of me?
Yes. Yes, and
Okay.
also with Cancer moons are particularly strong, even as far as the water
Uh-huh.
moons go, Pisces moon, Scorpio moon,
Hmm.
because the moon rules Cancer. And
Mm.
most of the
Hmm.
planets rule two zodiac signs. Venus rules Libra and Taurus, Mercury rules
Hmm.
Gemini and Virgo. But the sun and the moon each rule only one zodiac sign. So the moon rules Cancer. So the moon is very strongly placed in Cancer. The moon is extremely resonant and extremely strong and powerful in Cancer. So, yes,
Hmm.
all of the water sign moons, there would be that resonance with the older energies, but that would be much stronger, likely, with a Cancer moon.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. You have so much insight. I love it.
I could talk about this forever, as you know.
I know.
But
I
yeah,
know.
and even talking about that, the moon ruling Cancer, um, it's always, honestly, for everybody, it's
Mhm.
always good to notice where the moon is at, what part of the
Mhm.
cycle it's in. Is it a half moon? Is it a sliver crescent moon? Is it a full moon? Is it a new moon? We feel different when the moon is at different
Yeah.
phases, and we see that, fish
Mhm.
reproduce according to moon cycles, the tides
Right.
move according to moon cycles. We know the
Mhm.
moon moves water. We see that with
Yes.
the ocean tides. And
Mhm.
again, our bodies are 70% water, so it makes sense that the moon is impacting the waters of our body. And you know so as so it's always a good idea to kind of notice where the moon is at. And if it's a crescent moon, is it a waxing crescent moon? Is it on its way to a full moon? Or is it a waning crescent moon? It's on its way to a new moon. But it is even more important to be aware of the moon during Cancer season, because this is a time when the moon is so strong and influences us
Mhm.
even more. So,
Mhm.
the new moon in Cancer later this month, which, we'll talk about a little later on,
Mhm.
the new moon in Cancer is a really strong time, for beginning new things, setting new intentions, preparing ourselves for what we're going to manifest next. But even if nobody pays attention to the moon the rest of the year, Cancer season is a really good time to pay attention to what phase the moon is at.
Awesome. Awesome. That is wonderful. Wally, my logic gets me into trouble.
Well, and Wally, it's really hard in the modern world not to let our logic get us into trouble. In older cultures and civilizations, there was more reliance on intuition and our inner knowing, but we really live in a world, since the Greeks and Plato and Aristotle and Socrates, where everything needs to be logic based. And there are amazing
Mhm.
things about logic, but we've kind of gone too far in the other direction.
Yeah.
And now we're all encouraged to use logic all of the time. Culturally, we are encouraged
Mhm.
to use logic. So it's hard for us to get back to that intuitive space.
Oh, yes, yes. And intuitive is a good space to be. I'm trying to pin this comment. Anyway, keep keep going. There we go. I think I got it. All right. Okay.
And Ben has a question here. Um, are there signs that are more kinesthetic than others? Um, the short answer, Ben, is totally. The longer answer is that it's somewhat complicated because there's sun sign, there's moon sign, there's also, depending on where all of the planets are in your chart,
Mhm.
your sun and moon sign may not even be your strongest signs. There may be another planet and sign that's super strong in your chart. So
Mhm.
it can be a little bit tricky to pull apart what signs and planets are the strongest influences for you. We simplify it, in Western culture, to kind of saying, well, what's my sun sign? That's kind of what I am.
Right.
For some people, that's true, not for everybody. But absolutely, there are some signs that are more kinesthetic than others. And I would say at a high level, the the earth and water signs are more. The
Mhm.
fire and air, and even if you look back at like elemental theory, in various cultures, fire and air are all kind of about moving up and
Mhm.
transcending the
Mhm.
world. Fire is all about motivation, passion, air is all about logic, intellect, whereas earth and water are kind of the
Mhm.
denser elements that ground us in this three-dimensional world, and so they tend to be more tactile and more sensory
Mhm.
oriented.
Right. Right. Good. Ben's got
And that
some
could
good.
be, Ben has some really good questions. Yeah. And
He
that could
does.
almost be its whole own conversation around, all of the signs and sort of their, I don't want to say strengths and weaknesses exactly, because it's not that, but
Uh-huh.
sort of their superpowers. Um,
Uh-huh.
because they do all have, there are certain things each of the signs are really good at.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Very
such a good
good.
question.
Yes. I love it when we get good questions.
Yes, we appreciate our interactive audience. Um,
Yes.
and it's also worth keeping in mind, as we're going into Cancer season, um, it is a really good time to step back.
Mm.
Um, and in the summer, it can be hard to sort of, take yourself out of the world a little bit and schedule time just for you. Maybe
Mhm.
a bubble bath, a 2-hour meditation, maybe going to bed early, maybe curling up with a good book on a Friday night instead of going out with
Mhm.
friends.
Mhm.
But this is a really important, like, the word I always think of with Cancer is nourish.
Mm.
um, it's really, really important to nourish yourself during Cancer season. And as amazing as it is to hang out with people and go to a bunch of
Mhm.
social gatherings and parties and barbecues, that's not really nourishing. It can be
Right.
invigorating, especially for
Mhm.
extroverts, but it's not kind of nourishing. It's not,
Right.
it still requires interaction and effort, even if it's effort we enjoy.
Mhm.
And Cancer is much more, schedule some time going into your shell, where
Yes.
you don't have to put on any mask for the outside world. You don't have to
Mhm.
pretend anything or try for anything, and you can just be, and you can
Mhm.
just feel. And in a lot of ways, as if we kind of think of like, the summer solstice and these longest days of the year starting out Cancer season, In the northern hemisphere, those are the days when there is the most daylight. There's so much
Right.
light. And we can even see this metaphor where in Cancer season, we can see more. Like there's more light available to sort of shine onto our lives. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but we have to kind of take advantage of that. And if we do give ourselves that time to really like look and feel
Mm-hmm.
deeply into our own selves, we can see and perceive things that we can then make changes in our lives over the
Mm-hmm.
next year. But this really is the time to see the things and perceive and feel the things. And if we don't do that now, we don't necessarily know what changes we want to make later. So this, for example, might look like you spend some time in deep self reflection, and maybe you have
Mm-hmm.
some commitments in your life that just aren't resonating with you. And you're like, why am I, you know, the secretary for this committee? This actually doesn't resonate with me. Maybe I need to step back from that. So it's almost like we get on autopilot and just live
Mm-hmm.
our lives without
Mm-hmm.
asking what's really nourishing our soul.
Right. Right.
Cancer is the time when we can see what is not nourishing.
Oh, and that's amazing because that's a great time, like you said, really give yourself that time to look deeply into yourself. And then as even if you don't do it right now, when we head into winter time, when it's more natural for us to go inside, that's a great time to revisit your journal and be like,
Hmm.
what were those things that I thought that I, needed to work on? Because some things we're not ready to face quite yet. And some things
Yes.
we are, some things we're like,
Yes.
yeah, let's do this. And then other things we're like, yeah, maybe give me a minute, but that minute's going to come, right? And you're going to see
Hmm.
it. So I think that's beautiful because it also helps you. I mean, it helps you to grow and, not only like
Mhm.
release those things that don't serve you, but nourish and grow the things that do, that are important to you. That's beautiful. I love
Mm. Yeah, I
that.
love how you brought up growing there, Christy, because it makes me think of in astrology, we consider the sun
Mhm.
and the moon to be the two luminaries, the
Yeah.
two light bringers.
Uh-huh.
And, with the sun being the light bringer during the day, the moon being the
Hmm.
light bringer at night. And, I feel like we see how the sun helps plants grow. Like,
Hmm.
plants will even orient their leaves towards the sun and try to grow towards the
Yes.
sun. And plants, they photosynthesize. They basically eat light and
Right.
grow as a result. And so it's almost like the sun provides this physical growth in
Hmm.
our three-dimensional world, but the moon
Hmm.
provides this emotional, spiritual growth. And
Yes.
yeah, I love that you kind of use that word like growing, because I do think that's a perfect analogy for Cancer.
Hmm.
It's just not physically growing, getting
Right.
stronger muscles or whatever.
Right.
It's about
Right.
that
Right.
emotional, spiritual growth.
Yes. 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 Um, let's see. Somebody's headed back to catch up. I'm so glad you're here from the other side of the world. Oh, Ellie Chameleon. Awesome. Glad you're here from the other side of the world. You can head back and catch up, or you can just start from here.
Roll
And
with us.
otherwise, it's gonna sound like two chipmunks. We'll be like, I mean, it's got to be really hilarious. Actually, maybe if you need a good laugh, go back and watch us on 2 times speed. There you go. Bring some joy into your life.
And Rebecca has a great question. So is the
Okay.
introspection partially to see where we should grow in the coming year? I think yes, Rebecca. Um, but it's almost, um, I think the one part of that I'm hesitating on is the should, because
Hmm.
the should feels a little authoritative, like there's this right thing we're going to move
Right.
into. And the moon isn't really about shoulds.
Hmm.
Our world and ourselves, we tell ourselves, you should do this, you should do that, I should do this, I should do that. But the moon is not really oriented towards should. It's oriented towards what is most nourishing and helpful. So
Mhm.
yes, I think totally like, if you want to live a more, fulfilled,
Mhm.
satisfying,
Mhm.
soulful life, the moon will
Mhm.
show you where you can grow, during this
Yes.
Cancer season. But it's not about a should. There's no moral judgment. Some of the signs and some of the planets are more rules based. The moon is
Uh-huh.
not one of them.
Right. 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 Yes. And I always, when I talk about the moon and especially Cancer energy, it's always, to me, it's like the sun can almost be too bright. You can't look at it directly. But when you're
Mhm.
working with moon energy and especially this deep, nourishing growth energy, it's a gentle way to light up these things in our shadow side of us that we might,
Mhm.
the things that we've forgotten that we shoved down. It gently shows those to us in a very gentle, beautiful way, and then you can write them down, and then there will come a time when you bring those out into the sunlight and you look them head on and you deal with them. But in that moonlight, that's what I don't know, I just love moon
Mhm.
energy. But it's just so beautiful because it's not overpowering. Like, and if you think about
Yes.
it, if you're walking down a path, like you don't see everything straight away. It's as you get closer to it, then these things are brought to your attention. So I think if you think of it that way too, like, that this nourishing Cancer time is a great time to not be in a huge hurry about it. Just walk the path and see what you're shown, write it
Mm.
down, think on these things, and then when you're ready, bring them into the sunlight to do what you need to do. But, you know, um, even at that, sometimes it can be, we don't want all of our dark, shadowy stuff just flashed out there. Like, it'd be really,
Yeah.
that could be really scary. I would be like, no, 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 turn it off. Don't want to see.
Well, and I think you brought up memories, Christy, which I think
Mhm.
is so beautiful because water is very strongly associated with memory. And I
Uh-huh.
think part of that is because water is reflective. You look in
Right.
water and you see yourself looking back at
Hmm.
you. And so there is this
Hmm.
sense of water as a mirror and water as a
Hmm.
reflective tool. And as we
Hmm.
reflect, you really have to pause to reflect. And part of
Yeah.
that is, like you take a fire sign person,
Hmm.
strong Leo, Aries, they don't have time to reflect. They are moving
Right.
forward and, out there pursuing their stuff. And
Right. Right.
takes those watery people to reflect and look back. What happened before? How did I like how that turned out? What do I want to change? If I don't want that to happen in exactly the same way again. And
Hmm.
interestingly, I have one friend, he's a Pisces, not a Cancer,
Hmm.
but I have found that water signs have just the best memories. And I will talk to this friend of mine and he will say, "We already talked about this. Do you not remember?" And it's like he remembers everything we've ever talked about, and he just and he's always complaining about how the people around him have poor memories, but he has strong water placements, he's a Pisces sun, and
Uh-huh.
so he's just, yeah, he's like, "Why does nobody around me have a good memory?" And it's like, "Because you have a lot of water in your chart." So I love that you brought up the memory there, because the water
Yeah.
signs are really good at connecting and reflecting towards what happened before and connecting that to the present.
Nice. Nice.
Oh, and there's, yeah, some really great comments. Wally mentioned having bad luck with some Cancer sign people in his life. And, I think, Wally, what's so interesting is Cancer, because it's such a sensitive sign, sometimes
Mhm.
they will really put up that you'll see that shell, that defense
Mhm.
mechanism. And I have seen that way more often with Cancers than with any other sign, where they will have a boundary up of like gruffness, sarcasm, self-deprecating humor. Um, and again, it's it's been really helpful for me when I meet people like
Mhm,
that and maybe feel initially kind of turned off, to
mhm.
learn that they're cancers, and I'm like, the world is just too much for them. And,
Yeah.
sometimes they have to put up those boundaries and walls to protect that inner soft crab.
Mhm.
So, yeah, some Cancer people just present as beautiful, nurturing, loving. They just radiate amazing energy. But
Uh-huh.
some you do see the shell more than you see the crab, and you have to really get to know them to kind of get inside the shell and see the inner crab.
Right, right. And I think that can be situational because I know there are times where I have this very like, nope,
Ooh.
and then people who know me, they're like, you're so sweet, and I'm like, well, I have an aura apparently. I gotta say, you know. Let's see. Here's another one. Again, Ben, is there a season for passion? I love interacting with passionate people. It's like putting salt on something that's already strong.
Yeah, and absolutely, all of the fire sign seasons, Ben, are exactly this.
Mhm,
Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, all passionate in different ways, in different directions, and with different intensities,
mhm,
but all very passionate. And, it is, and we'll talk about Leo next month, but it's, every zodiac sign and corresponding season, there's sort of a beautiful high vibration manifestation and then a
mhm,
lower vibration manifestation. And I
mhm.
kind of loved where you were going with that comment too about having kind of bad luck with some Cancer sign people in your life. Um,
Right.
not all of us inherently manifest the best qualities of each sign. Each sign, just like it has some amazing superpowers, it also has some shadows that can kind of drag us down. And, you know, uh, yeah, we can talk about this more during Leo season. The passionate people are amazing in so many
Mhm.
ways. Interestingly, I've seen more of the shadow side of those fire signs over the last 6 months than I had in quite a while.
Yeah.
Um, so, again, um, like you mentioned, salt. Salt is a great seasoning. Who wants to live with no salt? Probably very few people. But if
Right.
you put too much salt on something, it's pretty
Yeah.
salty. So,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
there's again, and this is something we can all think about is how do we manifest the qualities of the season
Mhm.
at the highest vibrational level instead of the lowest. And with
Right.
Cancer, we've talked about some of the beautiful things about Cancer, the intuition, the nurturing, the nourishing, the self reflection, understanding
Mhm.
ourselves, prepping ourselves for change as a result of understanding ourselves.
Mhm.
But the lower side of Cancer is it's really easy during this season to sort of go into your shell and
Mhm.
maybe feel depressed or
Yeah.
disconnected. Water also, it anyone who is highly emotional and highly
Mhm.
emotionally intelligent, you feel all of these energies in the world, and that can
Mhm.
tend you towards depression sometimes. There's a lot that's kind of depressing out there if you're in tune with it. So, yeah, thinking about how to get the best vibration out of each season and maybe
Mhm.
dodge some of the shadows, or maybe even embrace some of the shadows, but do it in an
Mhm.
intentional way.
Mhm. 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 Yeah, I think intentionally embracing the shadows too is it's not completely an unhealthy thing,
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
at all.
And for
You have to
example,
look at.
there's a lot of terrible things going on in the world, and
Mhm.
sitting with that and
Mhm.
feeling that compassion and empathy for
Mhm.
people around the world who are struggling so much every
Yeah.
single day. There is something incredibly beautiful about that. But how do
Mhm.
you do that in a way that's protective to you and it doesn't drag all of your energy down in the process?
Right, right, right. And it looks like Rebecca had a question. So it's time to rest, relax, and reflect. Just sit in the calm so we can see what comes up. Do you recommend we reflect on what is coming up or write it down for now?
Um, I think I'm going to give a very Cancerian answer and say, I think use your own intuition on, what is going to work best for you. Because I don't think with Cancer
Right.
and with that ever changing moon that rules
Mhm.
Cancer, I don't
Mhm.
think there's one approach that's going to work for everybody. I think we
Right.
do need to kind of tap into what works for us. I do think always for all of us approaching something with a strong intention is
Mhm.
helpful. So,
Mhm.
if you do approach, if you sit in the calm, maybe setting an
Mhm.
intention around, I want to understand myself better. I want to understand this relationship better.
Mhm.
I want to understand, my relationship with my job better, whatever it is.
Mhm.
I think setting specific intentions can be really helpful so the universe can kind of bring those things into your awareness. Um,
Yeah.
but I could see a benefit to also just sitting there and having a mantra that's like,
Mhm.
I am open. Whatever the universe
Right.
has got, I'm here for it.
Exactly. And I think, in the spirit of Cancer, it changes day to day. So maybe one day
Yes.
you are really ready to face it, and in which case, get your pen, get your journal, sit down, write it all out. And then the next day, maybe that was so emotionally the last day that you're just like, I need to just, and that's okay too. And this is why I encourage, I mean, I don't preach, but if I did, I would preach journaling, because you can go back to it. It's written down, you're writing it in the emotion of the moment. You're getting that out, and then it's
Mhm.
your words, it's your voice. So then when you go back and you revisit it, you can get back into that energy because it's your energy. And
Yeah.
to face that, you can face that. um, so, but again, don't push yourself on anything that you're not ready to face,
Mhm.
because again, that moon, it just lights the things on the path that you need to see. You don't need to see 6 miles down the road, right, like you do in the day when you're driving. Maybe you just need to
Yeah.
see, 6 feet or 6 inches, whatever that
I
is,
love that
you know,
metaphor.
and yeah, and it's just because the moon just, it shows you only what you need to see in that moment, whereas the sun is like,
Mm.
there it is, and that's why I think, that's why I love moon energies, because it's very gentle in some ways. Like, I mean, it definitely
Mm.
will push you, but it's not bringing all of that stuff to the forefront that can be overwhelming. Um, so yeah, I mean, that would be my
I love
Cancer
that.
moon talk in there.
Love that.
you know,
And Wally had a really uh, practical question. How long did it take either of you to gain fluency in this subject? Um, I think it depends on how hard and deep you go, Wally. I think it has more to do with like, focused intentional effort than a specific, number of weeks or months or years.
hmm
Um,
hmm
I can say I felt reasonably proficient after two.
hmm
And I went in pretty hard and pretty deep and
uh-huh.
pretty fast. But for sure, I learn new stuff all the time. And I
Yeah.
feel like life becomes sort of your classroom, because you meet people and you
hmm
wonder, "Why are they this certain way?" And you
Yeah.
work with them, you see their chart, and some stuff
hmm
starts to click, and you're like, "Huh, I wouldn't have thought Saturn and Cancer would exhibit that way. Now I have another connection for Saturn and Cancer." So it's almost like,
hmm
you can learn the basics, if you're hitting it hard. Yeah, again, I felt pretty proficient after 2 years of hitting it hard,
hmm
but,
hmm
I know so much more now than I did then, because you
hmm
continue, like, every day you're kind of learning new things and making new connections.
Yeah. And I think for me, mine's always sort of been like, it just kind of gets presented to me and kind of dropped in my lap, and it's like, okay, here you go, here's this. And it's just, if you know me, is very much in flow with my life. But and I would say for me, when I find something interesting or I'm passionate about something, I really delve into it and I go and I learn. So I think I believe very much in divine timing too. So the right thing will show up to you at the right time, and you will have the right amount of intention and drive and wherewithal to manage that. So I would say don't give yourself a time limit. I think that's a lot of it. Like
Hmm.
it's so fluid, because there's a lot of things where I went really hard on it, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to set that aside for a little bit because that's not where I'm at right now.
Hmm.
Like I'm feeling more called to this, and it doesn't mean you forget that other thing. It just means it's not where you need to be at the moment. And um, and then you come back to it. You're like, oh right, there was that thing. Like I worked with this. Um, so yeah, I think you'll get there when the universe intends for you to get there. Um, but don't give up. Again, journal because you will come back to it. I have journals from years ago where I'm like, oh right, there was that thing because for me, I I do it and then I kind of forget and then I come back to it and I'm like, oh, right, 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 and then that person is like checking books, trying to find what I was looking for. So, yeah.
And I love that Ben here is mentioning, kind of the beta waves versus the alpha brain waves, and there's theta waves as well, which are more the dream state. And yeah,
Yes.
Ben, this is such a wonderful time to be embracing. Um, yeah, Gemini is so much in that beta state, the faster
Hmm.
wavelength, and moving down to the slower brain
Hmm.
waves. We haven't talked about dreams, but again, thinking about intuition, thinking about your subconscious, those deep waters of the soul, memories, all of that really contributes to a great time for dreams as well. So, if you have dreams and you wake up and you remember them, journal them. They probably mean something. There's probably a deeper meaning there from your higher self, from the universe.
Hmm.
So yeah, absolutely. The brain waves is a wonderful connection. And spending time in meditation too changes the brain waves and moves us to the slower brain waves. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, this is a wonderful time for all of that. And from Wally's question about this is the halfway mark from your birthday, you're a January Capricorn. What tends to happen, Wally, is that when you hit your half birthday mark, the sun is exactly opposite to where it was when you were born, and that um, the sun represents sort of our authentic self, our solar light that we put into this world. So typically on our half birthday, um, we struggle a little bit with like, who are we? I thought I knew my authentic self. I thought I knew who I was. I thought I knew the kind of light I was trying to put into the world. And we don't
Hmm.
quite feel that resonance. So oftentimes around that half birthday point, there's kind of a wait a second, I don't feel quite like myself. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, and it's helpful to know that that energy exists. Um,
Hmm.
um, it's helpful if there are some things that might be an inherent part of your personality, but may not be what you want. For example, let's say you're a person who loves talking, loves being the center of attention in a room, tends to interrupt people because you're so excited to get talking and get your point across.
Hmm.
Your
Hmm.
birthday would be a great time to be like, oh, how do I come across when I'm interrupting people and talking over people and, being the center of attention? Like it's a really good, um, yeah, I think, Wally, you used, does it make a sort of mirror? Yes, it does.
Hmm.
It kind of reflects back to you, oh, this is kind of who I thought I was. Am I super happy with that?
I don't know what just happened, guys. I'm so sorry. I was trying to
That must have
pin,
been
I was
that
trying
must
to
have
pin
been
a
our
comment.
Cancer take time to, like,
Yes.
reflect.
Right. It's Christy, take time to reflect that you probably ought to not fat finger everything. And guys, I'm so sorry.
All
Oh
good.
Lord.
All good. Exactly. I'm with Rebecca. This is the universe telling us to take a break. Maybe we were
Right?
getting a little bit too much in our heads, too much into the
Yeah.
Gemini talking discussion. And it's like,
Yeah.
let's just be, for 10 seconds.
Guys, I'm so sorry. Ah.
And
Breathe it in.
Wally, if you're saying you miss dreaming and you rarely dream any longer, Cancer season is a great time to start. Even just set that intention. You will be
Mhm.
shocked. Set the intention
Yes.
before you go to sleep that you want to dream and you want to
Mhm.
kind of receive communications and messages and metaphors during your sleep. And I feel like you will be shocked.
Yes. Yes. And I do that before I go to bed. I just set the intention. If there's a
Mm.
message that comes through, let me see it. If there's something I need to know, let me remember it. Otherwise, let me have a good night's sleep. And, it's just, and I say that every night before I go to bed. I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing.
You have the best intentions, Christy. I feel like your intentions are just always the best.
I, I try. So, what is the forecast looking like? We've talked a
Yes.
lot about
Oh, we
Cancer.
talked
What?
lots about Cancer.
Lots and lots. So, what is actually coming up for us?
This
Because
Cancer.
there are some dates and things. So, y'all get your pen, get your book, get ready to
Yes.
write some stuff down. What you got for us?
So that full moon we talked about in just a couple of days on the solstice,
Hmm.
on June 20th, in
Hmm.
those super early degrees of Capricorn, um, close to Venus. It's almost
Hmm.
exactly square Neptune in Pisces as well, because Neptune is at the very last degree of Pisces. So this is a really powerful full moon. So this is
Hmm.
a great time to set intentions. We talked a little bit earlier about boundaries.
Hmm.
Um, you know, this would be a really good time to set intentions around boundaries that you want
Hmm.
to set in your life. And again, as part of your Cancer reflection, maybe you're realizing some areas you're a little bit too emotionally open or vulnerable, and you want to
Yeah.
sort of set some walls there. This would be amazing for any of that. And because Venus is right there, it's a great time for um, intentions around relationships, whether that is with friends, family, significant others. If you want to, you know, potentially make some changes to those relationships, this is a great full moon to make those under.
Hmm.
Um, then, about a week later, on June 28th, Saturn turns retrograde in Pisces. Whenever these big outer planets turn retrograde, there is a pretty strong shift of energy. Um, Saturn is not super at home in Pisces anyway. Pisces is not a strong sign for Saturn. But there's sort of a Saturn in Pisces tends to be very creative in a structured way. So a lot of famous like fantasy books, like I think Lord of the Rings was released under this. Saturn in Pisces, Avatar was released under this. Very watery, like there's some good imagery and metaphors there
Hmm.
for Saturn in Pisces, but it's very creative, but in a pretty structured world building kind of
Hmm.
way.
Hmm.
So just recognizing that, Saturn is discipline and, moving from point A to point B and linear progression. When Saturn turns retrograde on the 28th, it's going to be a little bit harder to feel yourself making progress towards your long-term goals. Just stay the course. Um, no more tech stuff goofing up then. Thankfully, this one's not Mercury retrograde. So we're good there. The tech is all about Mercury, but more our longer term plans. We may feel like we're not making the progress we want towards our retirement savings or saving for that vacation next year or things like that.
Mhm.
But just keep doing the small things you can do each day. It might
Mhm.
not feel like you're making that long-term progress, but you
Mhm.
are. You are.
Mhm.
You just, it'll be harder to feel it when Saturn goes retrograde. Um, and then on July 1st, several things happen. First of all, Mercury moves from Cancer to Leo. So our communication, will have been a little bit more nurturing, supportive, encouraging, empathetic before that with Mercury and Cancer. It's going to become a
Mhm.
little more self centered starting July 1st. So
Mhm.
it is good to recognize that.
Mhm.
If we start to feel frustrated with people where it's like, hey, not everything is all about you. Why are you only talking about
Right.
you? It's like, oh, well, Mercury moved to Leo. We're all going to be a little bit more that way. But
Right.
this is also, Mercury in Leo is an amazing time if you have felt like you want to speak your authentic truth and have not
Mhm.
had the courage. Uh,
Mhm.
this is the time, people. So, Mercury in Leo, it knows who it is. It has all of the courage of the lion, and it is not afraid to roar. So
Right.
again, use this energy. Your mileage may vary, but this is a really great time for speaking your authentic truth and standing up for
Right.
yourself.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I'm with Wally. I do kind of like it when months start on, the beginning of the week. It does feel like a double fresh
Yes.
start.
Yes.
And as Mercury moves into Leo, it right away immediately opposes Pluto in Aquarius because Pluto is in those couple first degrees of Aquarius. So
Mhm.
that even more, we've got Pluto, that planet of transformation, opposing Mercury there. Um,
Mhm.
Mercury moves so fast, it's generally not a super powerful planet able to do super powerful things on its own. But
Mhm.
opposing Pluto, again, those first few days of July, there's a really big oomph for standing up for yourself, speaking your truth, shining your light. I think about Leo, and of course, this is not every Leo, but I think about the archetypal Leo, as like an actor who is standing
Mhm.
on a stage, live performance in front of a giant audience, one person monologue, so the whole spotlight is on them. That's kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
If you make a mistake or something, everybody's just looking at
Mhm.
you. There's nothing else that anybody's looking at.
Right.
So there's kind of that intense vulnerability, but
Mhm.
Leo has that courage of the lion and that, like,
Mhm.
I don't care if they don't like it. I like it. And this is
Right.
me,
Right.
and I'm going to do it. So there's something both simultaneously like very vulnerable, but very
Mhm.
powerful
Mhm.
about Leo. And yeah, so
Mhm.
again, as Mercury is moving into Leo, opposing that Pluto, that transformational giant, not giant physically, but giant energy planet,
Uh-huh. Right.
we have the ability to really change the narrative about ourselves. And if we haven't spoken up for ourselves before, we can now. And
Nice.
then also on July 1st, Neptune turns retrograde. So Saturn just turned retrograde a few days before on the 28th. On the 1st, Neptune turns retrograde. So now we'll have three of the outer planets retrograde. Pluto's already retrograde. Um,
Mhm.
and what's interesting about this Neptune retrograde is it almost got to the end of Pisces. It is in the final degree within 5 minutes of arc at the
Uh-huh.
end of Pisces. It's just about to move into Aries. It's right there. And then it starts
Mhm.
retrograding back into Pisces. So, this kind of brings an energy of like, I'm reaching out for the next thing. I'm reaching. Oh, I'm getting pulled back again. I didn't quite get there.
Right.
And
Right.
that first degree of Aries that it's moving towards is really significant. That's the first degree of the Western zodiac. And this last degree of Pisces, where Neptune is right now, is the last degree of the Western zodiac. So it's almost
Mhm.
like it's ready to make this giant fresh start, move from Pisces back to the beginning in Aries. But
Uh-huh.
right before that happens, it turns retrograde.
Right.
So Neptune represents our fantasies, our dreams, our hopes, our wishes for the future. And so, it's likely that we'll feel like we're reaching out. It's almost there. It's almost there. And then we're kind of getting pulled back. So hang in there. Neptune doesn't stay, retrograde forever, and it will move into Aries. But it won't move into Aries until March 2025. So, it's going to retrograde into Pisces for a while, then go forward in Pisces, and then finally make it into Aries March 2025. So, if some of your fantasies, dreams, wishes feel like they're slipping away, uh,
Uh-huh.
give it several months, and let's wait for Neptune to hit Aries in
Right.
March 2025. On July 5th, we have a new moon in Cancer. So we had our full moon at the very beginning of Cancer season with the solstice. Now we'll have our new moon 2 weeks later. So again, as we talked about in the very beginning, the new moons occur when the sun and the moon are, from the perspective of the Earth, they look like they're right on top of each other. So they are in the same sign. So there is just a very strong Cancer energy. This is one I might charge crystals under. But
Okay.
the new moons are less about manifesting. They're not
Mhm.
really about manifesting. They're about planting a new seed and starting a new cycle. If we think about like a garden, the new moon
Mhm.
is when you would plant the seeds in the earth. Everything's invisible. You can't see the seed, but
Right.
stuff is
Right.
happening under there in the earth. And then at the full moon, blooms would happen and you would see the manifestation of what
Right.
you planted during the new moon. So the new moons tend to be amazing for setting intentions. And again, because this is a new moon in Cancer,
Mhm.
that this would be such a wonderful time for any intentions around, intuition, um, emotional practices, spiritual practices. This is not going to be as good for um, setting an intention around like, oh, I want to fix my car, or these
Mhm.
three-dimensional world things. This is very
Uh-huh.
much internal work, um,
Right.
but will be absolutely amazing for that internal work. And this would be an amazing time too to do any water rituals, maybe like a
Mhm.
long, slow bubble bath, maybe, a hot, steamy shower. These are
Mhm.
also very hot days in the Northern Hemisphere. So maybe you have access to a pool, and you can, or, live near the ocean or a lake or something, but really immersing yourself in the water during this
Mhm.
watery new moon would
Mhm.
just be an amazing way to use this energy as well.
Go for a moonlit swim in your pool if you've got one. Find a creek.
That would be
Jump,
amazing.
jump your neighbor's fence, use their pool. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I would do it, but don't get yourself in trouble. I love that. I love that. Okay, so now that my sassiness has come out, what else have we got?
So on the 10th, so a few
Mhm.
days later, 5 days later, Venus moves from Cancer to Leo. And so
Mhm.
we're basically getting all of these planets that have kind of been in Cancer during Cancer
Mhm.
season are now moving into Leo.
Mhm.
So Mercury already moved in. When Venus moves in, um, there is a definite shift in our social interactions.
Mhm.
Venus in Cancer is much more quietly supportive. Um,
Mhm.
you know, uh, maybe talking with a close friend one on
Mhm.
one about things that are
Mhm.
deeply resonant with both of you.
Mhm.
Venus in Leo is more of the, flamboyant, bigger parties, big decorations. I think about Venus and Leo as almost being like those summer pool parties where you've got, everybody's got these like big inflatable, pool rafts and pool
Yeah.
noodles. And it's just kind of,
Uh,
and everybody's wearing their brightly colored bathing suits. And it's
right.
much more
Right.
of
Right.
that energy where
Uh-huh.
we're not talking one on one, we're not talking about anything deeply resonant. But
Right.
again,
Right.
it's a little bit of a corrective action. Cancer is
Uh-huh.
so internally focused. We don't want
Mhm.
to stay there forever. We would get
Right.
lost in the depths of our soul. So
Yeah.
Venus moving to Leo is like, okay, I'm ready to just have a little bit of fun, and it doesn't
Right.
have to be the deepest thing ever. I'm just ready to go out and experience the sun, experience, warmth. Joy is such a Leo thing as well. Just like have some joy. Cancer is amazing and, can bring peace, but it,
Hmm.
it doesn't really bring joy,
Right.
you know?
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
definitely a big social shift as Venus moves
So
from
buy
Cancer to
your
Leo.
unicorn, buy your unicorn raft and your bright swimsuit, and
Yes,
get some
be
bubbles
ready.
and just go out. Just do it all up, Leo, because you done sorted yourself out. Now go celebrate. You got it done.
Yes.
Right?
And yes, I love that. And I also feel like there's something we're coming out of Cancer season. Um, we do understand ourselves better if we've kind of done that reflective work. And
Yeah.
Leo is the sign of the self. It is the
Mhm.
sign of the sun. It is the sign of, the lion, sort of the
Ah,
ruler of the jungle, and there is
yeah.
this sense of like us being the ruler of ourselves, our space.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and so it's almost like we've learned who we are during Cancer.
Hmm.
And now we're ready to share that and say, hey,
Yeah.
world, look at me, and roar
Uh-huh.
with our Leo voice, in our
Right.
newly rediscovered authentic self.
Yes.
Um, so
Yes.
it's going to be some beautiful energy.
Love it. I love it. I love it.
And then, all right, and then we have Mars is going to move from Taurus to Gemini. So most of our inner planets are moving from Cancer to Leo as we move into
Mhm.
July. Mars is lagging behind because we've got a Mars retrograde coming up. Not this month, but it's coming.
Mhm.
I don't know, Mars retrogrades, they're tricky for me. They hit everybody differently.
Yeah.
Mars is a little bit difficult in my chart. So, like, Mars and I
Mhm.
have a tenuous relationship. So, anyway, Mars is lagging behind and
Uh-huh.
it is still in Taurus.
Mhm.
And on the 20th, it will move from Taurus to Gemini. So,
Mhm.
Mars in Gemini can mean more friction with words, with communication. We get frustrated with people more
Mhm.
easily. People say things that grate on our nerves a little bit more. Um,
Uh-huh.
so it's worth being aware of that. Mars in Taurus tends to be more internally focused. Like we might get frustrated, but we won't show it. We'll kind of keep
Ah.
it inside. But Mars in Gemini, you'll see it. So,
Mhm.
it's really easy to get, road rage and frustrated with the person at the grocery store in front of you who's taking too long and, those kinds of day to day things. So just
Mhm.
be aware of that, channel some of that Cancer empathy, understanding for the world
Right.
around you, so that we can kind of make it through Mars and Gemini pretty safely. But, the other thing, Mars does bring, friction, frustration, but
Mhm.
it also brings movement. Um,
Right.
and Gemini is all about movement and travel. So frequently, we do see when Mars moves through Gemini, a lot of travel, like
Mhm.
moving from one place to another. So, it might be like you take some weekend trips, you take your big summer
Mhm.
vacation, things like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it is also a really good time to, Gemini just does not want to be stuck ever, ever.
Right.
And
Right.
Mars doesn't want to be stuck either. So between the
Mhm.
two of them, I mean, there will be some friction when you want to move forward and the person in line in front of you at the grocery store is going too slow. There will be that. But there is
Right.
also the, oh, now I have the motivation. I'm going to go book that weekend trip.
Yeah.
I'm going to go take a walk in the woods. Those things where we're like, oh, I keep meaning to do that and I don't.
Mhm.
With
Mhm.
Mars and Gemini, we will do it. We will have that motivation, that energy. Gemini and Mars will work together to say, let's do it. So
Right.
there is some good stuff there. It's not only frustration.
Right. Right.
And then we're basically into Leo season. On July
Mhm.
21st, the sun moves from Cancer to Leo. And so that is our whole start of Leo season, which we'll probably talk about next month. But that,
Yeah.
in a nutshell, is what our month looks like.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, and you guys, we are going to do a show on retrogrades. We're going to talk about retrogrades, what they mean, what you should be wary of, what the positive is, right? Because, it's not
Yes.
all just bad. But I love this. I mean, this is my time, this is my time to
It's
shine.
a Cancer moon. It is. It
I'm just
is.
like, let's just be flowy.
Well, and I think, and I'm just thinking about you in particular, Christy, and any other
Uh-huh.
Cancer moons out there for sure. But again,
Mhm.
because the moon is so strong in Cancer, um,
Uh-huh.
one thing I'm seeing a lot of in
Mhm.
2024, and I think there are
Mhm.
multiple astrological reasons for this, but I'm seeing this energy of people where there's like a disconnect between what they feel like they should do and
Mhm.
so they're trying to kind of do that, but it's not resonating with their soul. And so there's this
Mhm.
kind of push and pull between, well, I
Mhm.
really feel like I should do this. I feel like this is the smart thing to do, this is the best
Mhm.
thing to do.
Mhm.
um but then kind of feeling like, then why don't I feel good doing it?
Ah,
And
yeah.
this is the season, for that Cancer moon to really say, you don't need to justify it. It might be
Yeah.
smart, it might be logical, it might be the
Mhm.
decision everybody else would tell you to make. But yeah, this is the time to really, if there are things where you've been feeling that struggle in 2024
Mhm.
so far, anybody here, but again, I'm thinking especially of you, Christy, with that Cancer
Mhm.
moon.
Mhm. Right.
Um, it's you can let go of that need
Mhm.
or desire to justify how you're
Mhm.
feeling with logic and just be like,
Mhm.
this is what I'm feeling. And Cancer
Right.
will be really supportive of that.
Right. That's amazing because I do justify how I feel a lot. I mean, I'm really like, well, I'm feeling this way because blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And sometimes, when it comes to how we're feeling, maybe we can't always put that into words. Maybe there's not
Yes.
always the words to do. And so you just say, I'm just feeling this,
Yeah.
like I don't know why, but this is just how I'm feeling. And I love that the intuition and the intention is going to be so strong because those are two things I work with a lot. And
Yeah.
it is really during this time I really do sit with it and kind of look at what can I do to be better. Do we have anything else? Am I missing? Because Stasia showed up and I just kind of quit. Stasia, oh, God bless America. I don't know what I did, but I hit a start thing and everybody just stopped. And then it was doing this random countdown in the middle of the show.
It's okay. It all wound up fine.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean, I don't even
I'm
know how
getting
I did it. I really don't.
it was our message from the universe, courtesy of
Right.
you, to step back, do that
Right.
self-reflection.
Right. Right. Right.
And even thinking like Christy, where you talked about like trying to, justify your emotions with
Mhm,
logic, which I think so many of
mhm.
us, especially in our modern society, are programmed to
Yeah.
do. But
Mhm,
if you think about even English as a language,
mhm, mhm.
um, it's not really built for expressing anything emotional. It is
Right.
mind blowing to me that we have the word love, and it's,
Mhm.
oh, I love my partner. I love French fries.
Yeah.
I love my car. I love my
Yeah.
town. Those are not all the same,
No.
but
No.
that is the word we have. And so
Yeah.
even there are some languages that would give us better words for
Mhm,
describing how we feel and why
mhm.
something isn't resonating with us. English is not really that. It's a language of global commerce that lets us
Right.
logically track what needs to get done and when, but it is not a language rooted in emotion. So there might be languages where it would be easier to express
Hmm.
why we're feeling a certain way, but yeah, English feels like not a very good one.
Yeah, and it's hard because for me, being an Aquarius sun and then a Cancer moon, like I always default to the logic, like
Yeah.
always. I'm gonna take the wind out of your sails 9 times out of 10, and I don't do it on purpose. It's just what I do.
Mhm.
Um, but I like being able to be creative because I think my emotions. I don't feel my emotions. I think my emotions. And so when this time of year comes around, it's really nice to really kind of, Ben, you're so on
I know.
me. I'm trying to be serious here, Ben. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. um, but I noticed that a lot of my uh, like so I'm going to do a little shameless promotion here for a minute. I wrote a song called Should Have Known. It's a very deeply emotional song. And I am releasing that music video Friday. Releasing it, so tell everybody. But I wrote that song in the summer. And all of that was that working through that emotion. All of the songs that I wrote were in the summer. And I can always tell whenever I have something that was done in the summer because it's much more passionate, um, it feels like.
Mm.
So, yeah. Yeah, so it's good, and so if you guys didn't hear that on Meeting a Meeting, doing a premiere for my music video. I wrote the song. I didn't play, I didn't sing it. Stasia put the music video together, but we're doing a premiere on Friday. I think, what do we say, Stasia? 7 my time. And so we're doing that so we can watch it together, and then I'm going to go live after, and we can talk about it because I'm just so excited. I didn't know what would ever happen with it. Yes, I'm releasing it on my channel. Yeah. So if you guys have not subscribed, please subscribe. I'm trying to get to 500 subs. That's a big milestone in YouTube. So please send people over. But yeah, I'm gonna dress up my best Joan Jett, like rock star, come to the party, ready to go. But again, it was written in the summertime, and I think what a great time. It sounds like it's a great time to
Mm.
release that. So with the
Yeah.
emotion. So
With the emotion, with the memories. Yes.
yeah, 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 yeah. And yeah,
Mm.
Joan Jett. I love Joan Jett. Now, I wanted to ask you, and again, this is kind of for a selfish reason, but there might be a few other people out there. Aquarius and Pluto in Cancer.
Mhm.
What is that looking like? Like, what am I kind of in for personally? Because I'll tell you, it's been a ride since the 1st of
Yeah.
January. It's been a ride. I thought, we've slowed down. We haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Yeah.
So what's that looking like?
So Pluto takes a long time to traverse signs,
Hmm.
some more, some less, but on average
Hmm.
20 years in each sign.
Hmm. Hmm.
And Pluto, as Pluto, so for people who have Aquarius sun, Aquarius moon, Aquarius rising, or important planets in Aquarius,
Hmm.
um, Pluto will move on top of those, over the
Hmm.
next 20 years as it moves through Aquarius.
Hmm.
And Pluto transforms. Pluto
Hmm.
digs deep and Pluto
Hmm.
transforms. And so, particularly when you have Pluto, approaching your sun, which is you,
Hmm.
your authentic self, your
Hmm.
presence in this world, there is kind of an energy, like typically there's a transformation that takes place. Um,
Hmm.
which I have generally seen be very beautiful, very
Hmm.
butterfly-like, kind of like
Uh-huh.
those parts of yourself that feel like potential become
Hmm.
reality. But transformation is never super comfortable. We never just like sip Mai Tais into transformation. There's generally some pretty deep soul searching and,
Right. Right.
stuff that kind of goes into that.
Yes.
So it tends to be very transformational. And again, especially with your son being there on a self level, it's not
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
your relationships are being transformed or your
Hmm.
communication is being transformed. It's you are being
Hmm.
transformed.
Hmm.
So very beautiful, but it does make sense. It would feel like a little bit of a wild ride. Transformation
Hmm.
doesn't come smoothly.
Right. Right. So until I'm 68, this is what I got.
Well, okay, so really quick, I'm just going to pull up your chart because, you know, it, there's an acute time when it's moving
Uh-huh.
exactly over your sun.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I think, is your sun at 22 degrees? It is, right?
Yes, because we have our sun at the same degrees. Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, for the next 10 years, for sure, 10 to 15. And then it's gonna and again, it doesn't mean that it's gonna be intense during that
Right,
whole
right,
time. There are certain
right.
things that will light it up. So, for instance, when other planets are also moving through Aquarius, those might light
Mhm.
some things up. Um,
Okay.
uh, yeah, so it won't feel equally intense for 15 years.
Right.
But yeah, there will be hot spots that kind of
Okay.
show up
Hmm. And
leading
so if
up
you,
to this transformation as a butterfly.
right. So anybody with Aquarius and sun, moon, or rising, but
Buckle up a
buckle your
little bit,
seat.
but know that again, Pluto always leaves things better than Pluto finds
Hmm.
them. You know, if
Right,
there's like
right.
mold growing under the carpet, you know, and it's releasing
Hmm.
little spores into the air and
Hmm.
making everybody in the
Hmm.
house sick, Pluto
Hmm.
digs and finds that mold and replaces the carpet and everybody gets healthy, but that's just a lot of
Right,
work. You know, so
right,
Pluto
right,
always leaves things better than Pluto finds them,
right. And so this would
whatever
also
that's
be
worth.
really, no, no. And so it would be really good too for anybody who's got Aquarius and those, those signs. Really journal over these next years because you're going to be able to go back and
Yeah.
see. Because sometimes as we
Oh,
grow, we don't necessarily see how we've grown, but sometimes we can see it. But for me, writing it, going back and looking through those journals is going to show a lot. So
yeah,
good.
and you will probably look at these journal entries from now and you will be like, who is that person? Did I used to be that person? You know, there will be a measure of
Yeah.
that.
Right, right, right. So, if you're already in a good space, imagine how much better you're going to be on the other side of it. Right?
Yeah.
So,
All of
good,
us
good
have room to
with it.
grow, and Pluto helps us get there,
Yeah, yes. And yes, Deja, journal a lot. Journal a
which is
lot.
Krista's answer for everything.
Right. It really is. It really is. Journal, 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 journal. Do I sound like anybody we know? But it is so important because you really can go back and look at it and see and figure out what's going on. The lifeboat is another channel, and Tommy's always like, "Did you journal?
Mhm.
Are you journaling? Did you journal?" And everybody's like, I don't journal." Then I come over here and I'm like, "I've been saying it forever."
It can
Like,
also just be a few words. You know, I know for me,
yeah.
I was never able to get into like the long form,
Hmm.
well put together thoughts. But even if it's
Right.
just a few words on how
Hmm.
you're feeling or what's going on with you,
Hmm.
that lowered the barrier to entry for me. So I felt more comfortable
Yeah.
journaling. So,
Well,
whatever it is, people, even if it's just a few words.
and I seen you journaling one time. We did like a Sabbath together, and y'all, she had like washi tape, and she was drawing, and I don't even know if there was even a word on the page, but it was beautiful. And I was like, and then I've got stuff that looks like this. So, there's no wrong way to do that either. So
No.
find your outlet. If creativity is how you process through those emotions and everything, then do it that way. It can be pictures, it can be art. They sell, if you're getting into tarot, they have tarot card. Oh, look at the card I pulled. How beautiful is that?
That's a
Ace of
wonderful one.
Pentacles, love it. But you can, if you want to bring that energy in, or you're feeling that energy, they've got stickers, they've got stamps.
Mhm.
And so maybe you're having a really bad day and it's just 10 of swords all over the page. Well, that was just a bad day, right? So you don't have to do it a certain way, just a way that you would understand that it flowed for you.
Mm.
So awesome. Well, Karina, this has
Mm.
been so much fun. We caught everybody's um stuff
Questions,
as we
yeah.
went along. Yeah, we already got that from Rebecca. Um, I think we caught everything as we went along. Is there any final thoughts or final words? Does anybody have any quick final notes or anything for us? But Karina, do you have a final thought for Cancer season and what's
I
coming up
said
for
this
us?
earlier. I'll just repeat it because I feel like it is the most important thing if you take nothing else away from this session. The moon is always important, but it is supercharged when it is in Cancer,
Mhm,
the sign that it rules, and during this Cancer
mhm,
season. So even if you
mhm,
normally are like, I don't know if it's a full moon or a new moon, I don't know if it's a crescent moon or a waxing moon or a waning moon, keep
mhm,
track. Keep track this month and notice how you feel and what
mhm,
changes and feels different when it's a waxing half moon versus a full moon
mhm.
versus a waning crescent moon, because we will be more in touch with the moon and the moon will be influencing our energies a lot more this during Cancer season.
Yeah, and you can Google, can't you just Google moon phases
Yes,
throughout the month?
absolutely. Yeah, or
So
like a lunar
that's
calendar. You can Google
yeah.
lunar calendar and it will show you, full, half, new,
Mhm.
half.
Right, right, right. Ben needs French milk pie. Yes, Ben, go get you some French silk pie. We're giving you
That sounds
permission.
like a must.
All right. Well, Karina, give us one more time where we can find you on YouTube. And then when you're done with that, stay put, if you would, and we'll have Stasia
Perfect.
take us out.
Perfect. Yes, I'm at Magic of the Moon Astrology on YouTube, and my website is magicofthemoonastrology.com. And I do readings, individual readings or larger groups, and I'm offering a discount on hour-long readings of $20 for this Cancer season. If you go to checkout and enter Cancer 2024, all one
Mhm.
word, in the checkout process, you will get that discount.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Karina. Thank you, everybody, for being
Thank
here.
you
And
all for all of your
we,
interactions and great questions.
yes, it was wonderful. And we will see you again soon. Take care.